Hey everyone, welcome back to Unlearn with Bianca. If you're here for the first time, then welcome. On this podcast, we explore everything around self-healing, health, personal growth, the mind-body connection, relationships, and more. Hey guys, another week, another episode. I am sitting here trying to wrap my head around the fact that it is almost July. I cannot be the only person who is completely shocked at how fast this year is going. But as we know, I feel like the older you get, the faster the time goes. I don't know how that works, but it is a thing. So welcome back, guys. Today on the episode, I'm going to be talking about my journey to embracing my body and building the relationship that I have with my body and body image. And this is an episode that a few people have actually asked if I can speak on, and I put it out to my followers a while back. Is there anything you want to hear about? And this seems to be quite a recurring theme, not only for my clients, but also, like I said, through Instagram, a few people asked for this episode. So yeah, I'm more than happy to speak on this. Let's get into it. This is a topic that I've really I guess I could say I've had my own story with, I've had my own journey with, and I hope that you take something away. So I'll start by saying that in today's day and age, it can be a really challenging thing to accept our body, to like our body, to embrace our body, because we are bombarded by media. We have all sorts of beauty standards, plus a whole lot of other things. They can really be at the root of so much shame, so much discontentment that we hold towards our bodies. And of course, for some people, there are further experiences, pain, trauma, abuse, those sorts of things that can even further disconnect them from their bodies and the way that they perceive their bodies. So what I want to say before I start this isn't medical advice, what I'm speaking on. This is purely from my experience. I do understand that many of us can have really complex relationships with our bodies. And for some, it's a lot more complex and nuanced than what I'll be able to speak on in this podcast. What I've come to realize is not only are we with our body for life, learning to have a good relationship with your body is a lifelong process. And I feel like recently I have reached this place where, for the most part, at the moment, I am really comfortable and accepting of my body, and I feel at ease. And this has not always been the case. So, of course, this might change with the seasons of life as my body changes. And there's still things that I work on. But for the most part, this relationship that I have had towards my body, towards the way I look, has completely changed over time. I used to spend so much of my time and mental energy focused on the way I looked and working against my body. And I've been reflecting before this podcast around how much has actually changed for me. And I really believe that we can't hate the experiences that have shaped us to find any sort of like internal peace. So therefore, I have accepted these really challenging parts of my life where I've really struggled to like my body and like what it looks like. But now I feel this freedom on the other side, and I feel like it feels even better to have gotten here because it has taken quite a while. So I want to give you a bit of a backstory around my relationship with my body and body acceptance. I wasn't someone that was naturally content. I was not someone who was naturally confident in my body, and I actually felt very disconnected from it for most of my life. So like many of us, I've had this complex relationship. I had some really restrictive patterns from quite young, from about the age of 14, 15, I remember, just random memories. Like I remember making sure I did a certain amount of time and kilometers on this exercise cycle in front of the TV. I remember knowing calories and going along to Weight Watchers with my mum and really understanding all of these nutritional facts. I had just been hyper fixated on health and making sure I led a healthy lifestyle to the point where it took up a lot of energy. I would restrict carbs. I always wanted to get cosmetic surgery done. And there's no judgment around that, by the way. I just never had the money. But this wasn't from a place of liking my body and enhancing it. This was from a place of wanting it so that I would be happy. So yeah, I spent a lot of my energy focused on what I didn't like and what could be better. So moving into my late teens and 20s, I again spent so much time critiquing my shape. I was constantly exercising from this place of wanting my body to look a certain way. I was very judgmental of myself. And when I did indulge, when I did kind of enjoy, I felt like I had a lot of guilt. Then I would fall into cycles of restricting and then, indulging. And then I'd get guilt for restricting and guilt for indulging. It was really exhausting. Like, it wasn't exhausting at the time, but looking back now, it's a pretty exhausting way to live. I was constantly in my head. And then when I started experiencing pelvic pain and fibromyalgia pain in my late teens and early 20s, I became even more resentful of my body. I felt like I'd lost all control over it, and I felt even more disconnected. So eventually, when I got well and I was no longer living with discomfort, I didn't have pain. I felt more neutral towards my body, but I didn't feel overly connected to it either. And I was still moving and operating from this place of pushing and not really showing appreciation towards my body. So I did sort of slip into some old patterns of anxiety, thinking that I had to look a certain way that would make me feel consistent, hit workouts, like over exercising, coffee on an empty stomach, probably not eating enough. Then I got to this point in my mid 20s when I was living in London, and I got really, really fit, and I looked really good externally. I felt really good internally in terms of consistency and discipline, but I came off the pill and then I lost my period for 8 months. And that's when I knew again at that point that that was a sign that something else internally needed to shift. And this is when it sort of forced me to connect with my menstrual cycle, forced me to look at my hormones and start tuning inwards again. So fast forward to now, what are we, like early 30s? I feel like now I have more freedom. I really like my body and I listen to it. And this is a path that took me a long time to get to this point. But I am so appreciative of all the seasons I've gone through that have got me here. So what I want to do for the rest of the episode is to share some aha moments that I've had that have led me to this place where I feel content, where I feel connected, and I aim for balance. I really value a healthy diet, daily movement, and I like looking good, but all of these things do not define me. And I don't live in this place where it takes up all of my energy like I used to. Sometimes I find myself slipping into old habits because body acceptance is a practice, but I don't stay in this place because my internal perspective has shifted. Okay, so here are some things that I've learned that have really helped me improve the relationship with my body. Number 1, explore the roots. So I think this is a really good place to start. For me, a big part of understanding why I was approaching my body from this place of judgment and critiquing is trying to understand where this may have actually started and what led me to this place. Because like I've said on other episodes, we are not our thoughts. And we are often just recycling beliefs and thoughts that we've been modeled or from society and all sorts of things. But if we understand this, it helps us realize that working against our body is not what we are born to do. It's something we've picked up along the way. For example, you may really struggle with body acceptance, and it may have been, that your caregivers or people around you were really critical towards you and your body, or perhaps they weren't critical or judgmental towards you, but you witness people speaking and being critical towards their own body. I grew up in this era, and I'm sure some of you know what I'm talking about, of the Dolly magazines, the Cosmo magazines, the Sealed section, all of these unrealistic diets. And yes, all of this contributes to the way that we view our body, because a lot of this has just been kind of in our collective sphere, and we will have taken certain beliefs from that. And again, I'm saying this because once you understand that all of these external things have an impact on the way we perceive ourselves, you can cut yourself some grace and there can be a level of acceptance and forgiveness. So I really had to start challenging some of these core beliefs that I had soaked up earlier on in my life and really look at where I could start filtering and finding evidence to believe something different. I used to believe that skinny was good. I used to believe that I had to work really hard and strive really hard, and that was what success was. But really, that was just leaving me disconnected from my body. So I had to start challenging these beliefs. And I had to also start asking myself how I wanted to determine success. I got to this point where my values started shifting in my late 20s, and I think this happens to all of us as we move through life and go through seasons. But I decided I want to live a life where I can enjoy life, where I will be present with my loved ones, with my friends. So I had to work towards thinking about how that person would talk to themselves, what beliefs they would have, and reassessing my values was really fast-tracked when my mum became sick, because at the end of her life, we had some really difficult conversations. And, you know, one of the things she said to me is that she'd spent a lot of time working against herself and not accepting her body. And I really thought, do I want to be spending all of this time and energy being at war with what is, being at war with my body? Because I had been smacked in the face with realizing how short life is and how much working against ourselves can limit us and limit us enjoying life. So there was this real value shift in how I wanted to see myself and how I wanted to live my life. And I think as well, I'm kind of just talking on the whim here, but there has to be this level of forgiveness and self-forgiveness that you only know what you know in the past. You were only taught what you were taught in the past. For some people, it might look like healing some deeper trauma to get to this place, but we have to look at doing this work so it doesn't seep into the rest of our life. Okay, so the next thing that really helped me develop this relationship with my body is becoming educated. We cannot expect our car to be running forever and ever and ever and never take it for an oil change. To be honest, I used to think it was like this. Found out pretty quickly it's not. But it is the same with our bodies. Our bodies are our physical vessel that take us from A to B. And a really core part of me building this relationship with my body, it's started with education and understanding how to nourish my physical vessel. So educating yourself on what foods are really good from this nourishment standpoint, not judging foods as good and bad, but more around nourishing macronutrients, micronutrients. And I will get someone on this podcast soon. We've got a nutritionist lined up so we can go more into that. I actually realized when I thought I was really healthy in London that I had probably been under eating. And when I ate more fats and protein, things shifted dramatically in my body. I also realized and educated myself around my cycle, because that's not something that we naturally get taught. And it makes a huge impact if we can move and work around our cycle as much as possible for women. So this education piece is really important because we have to get the foundations right physically so that we operate at our best. And we can start to play around with what really feels good when we've tried a few things. And this is out of empowerment and choice. There is so much information out there now. There are so many people that can give you nutrition advice and movement advice. But the thing is, stick to the basics, start with the basics, start to understand what it takes to nourish your body at that baseline level, and then start choosing what feels good for you. And that moves into the next bit. The next point that I've really realized is that comparison is the thief of joy. It is you, and it's only you against you. A lot of us are constantly driven to compare ourselves with others. Yet we're comparing ourselves with people that probably don't have body shapes like us, that don't look like us, that don't have the same metabolism as us. Like all of these things, it just makes it so difficult. And it leaves us feeling like we are not innately good and healthy as we are. This can disconnect us further from this innate intelligence that we have from our own bodies when we are comparing ourselves to everyone else around us. So there's two things here I want to speak on. Sometimes it can feel difficult not to compare when you're constantly seeing everyone else's stuff on social media, but we really have no idea what the other person feels like internally. So it's always remembering that you're only seeing a tiny portion of someone's life. You don't have any idea about the relationship they have with themselves or their body. So I always keep that in mind. And the second thing is that no one is judging you the amount that you are judging yourself. And I want you to remember this. When I really thought about how little I noticed about other people and what they were doing and how they looked, and all of that mental energy was focused on critiquing myself and judging myself, I really thought it's probably the same. Other people probably aren't that concerned about what I'm doing and what I'm looking like because they're too focused in their own world. So remember, stay in your lane. Comparison is a thief of joy. Focus on what you can do and building that relationship with yourself in your own body, your beautiful body that is amazing as it is. Number 3, the third thing I started to do to develop this body acceptance was listening to my body's cues. I think so many people are so busy, making ends meet in today's day and age, but also just pushing forward consistently, that they're not allowing any space, any room to really listen to their body's cues, the information that the body is sending. And if we don't listen, you probably already know this by now, but the cues and the signals, e.g. symptoms, are going to get louder. So I gave that example of losing my period until I looked at what I was eating, how I was fueling my body. Until I slowed down, nothing changed. So our body's always sending us these cues, but we need to start tuning in. So we can start to tune into our body's cues in the smallest of ways. And this can be really confronting for a lot of us. It was confronting for me because most of us are living from our heads unless we practice getting into our body. So it starts with taking action on these small hits and cues from our body. For example, if we are hungry, we need to eat. We don't want to just be pushing past it. If we feel really, really tired, that is our cue that we need to get more sleep. Stretching, if we feel like our muscles are tight, it might be like 5 minutes of stretching, and then just taking that space to tune into how does this actually feel? Does this feel better? Does this feel worse? Do I need more of this? Do I need less of this? So this is something that I've developed probably only in the last 5 years, to be honest. Before that, I was just doing things out of autopilot and, moving through that way very quickly. But the more I've started to connect in with like those small cues, even like I need to go to the bathroom, I need to go now, not holding on because that's, again, working against your body. If you need water, hydrate yourself in that moment. The more we can respond to our body when it has cues, the more we're building that relationship and that connection with our body. So think about this and think about just one thing you can practice. It might be eating when you're hungry. It might be drinking when you're thirsty. Keep it really simple. So another thing that I have balanced out in my life that's helped me connect to my body's cues, I used to be really focused on tick boxes and lists and things that I have to do each day. Of course, there's a degree of that still, but I've also started checking in with myself around how I want to feel. And this is a completely different question. It's not around achievements. It's not around doing. It's more around feeling. So lately, I have been really craving slowness in movement and mindfulness. So I've been doing things and moving in ways that really help me tap into that energy. Perhaps at the end of the year, I'll want that feeling of consistency and discipline. So I'll change what I'm doing to get that feeling. So rather than just showing up in one way, know that we can move through seasons and we can expand, we can contract, we can want different things, and that's okay. I think since experiencing grief as well, I've really had to work on nurturing myself and, letting emotions in. So I'm getting better at understanding perhaps when I need to move, when I need to cry, when I can make space for these emotions. It actually frees up a lot of space in my body rather than just constricting, rather than just pushing through or overeating just to smother emotions. It's actually about, noticing after I cry, after I feel angry, after I express, how do I feel? That is another way that we can tap into our body's cues and develop this relationship. And notice, I'm not even talking about how we feel towards our body externally. This is all internal because I truly believe it starts internally. One more thing I'll add on as well. For a long time, I used to get into the experience of guilt after eating something I would class as naughty or not sticking to my exercise regime. But what I noticed in my body afterwards is that I would experience anxiety. I'd experience a tight chest. I'd feel constricted. I'd feel tense. And that was an activation of the stress response that activated the fight or flight or the sympathetic response in my body. So you can actually see that sometimes we think we're doing the right thing. We think we're eating a healthy diet. We think we're exercising. We're being really healthy. But inadvertently, we are activating the stress response because we aren't doing it from a compassionate place. We're not being compassionate to ourselves, giving ourselves grace, having any balance. So that's just another thing I've noticed. And yeah, I think when we work on this, we can really lower our overall stress response in the body. Okay, next one, number 4. You are beyond your body. I'll say that again. You are beyond your body. You are far bigger than just your body. You are not your body. We are energy. And I know this sounds a little bit woo-woo, but there is a physical body that is not you. We are more than that. So many of us place emphasis on our physical body and the way it looks, but true magnetism, true attraction is in your confidence. It's in your connection with yourself, maybe your fearlessness, your authenticity, your heart, your playfulness, all of these things that it doesn't matter what we look like. So when we're in that constant mindset of judging ourselves and picking ourselves apart, it keeps us in our head. It creates this rigidity, and we can't tap into any of those light playfulness, like living from the heart. We can't tap into that as easily. We all know those people that just walk into a room, they're magnetic, they exude confidence. And because they are confident in themselves and the way they present themselves, we see that, we feel that, and we notice that. So let's place less emphasis on just our physical body. Don't get me wrong. I like looking good, feeling good, dressing up, all the rest of it. Do what you need to do to make you feel good, but also work on your energy just as much. And the way we can work on our energy is just by making those small commitments to ourselves, to doing uncomfortable things, to accepting parts of ourselves we don't necessarily like, and just showing up fully and being authentic. It takes time, it takes practice, but I want you to remember this because this is a huge one. When we can see beyond the physical body, we are so much more than that. And that leads nicely into my 5th point. You cannot heal something you are working against. I learned this when I had chronic pain. I had spent so much time resisting and hating the pain that it was creating more of a stress in my body. So we're in this energy of fighting ourselves consistently. We can't heal from that place. And it's the same with body acceptance and body love. You cannot love your body if you're constantly coming at it from a place of hate. Okay. So let's say you're on a healthy eating plan or you're on a new exercise regime. If you're coming from this place of constantly hating on yourself while you're doing that, it's going to be really hard to get results. Whereas if you accept where you're currently at and you are working towards this new identity and you can see what positive changes it's going to be and you're really compassionate and patient with yourself, that's a completely different place and it's going to feel completely different. So often I think we do these diets and exercise programs that we're not actually even enjoying. And it just creates more resistance, more pushing, more depriving. There are times in the past where I wanted to lose weight because I thought it would make me happier. But what I realized looking back is that I was making a lot of choices that were actually driving me further away from happiness because I was doing these diets that were extreme. I was being so hard on myself, and that was just creating more and more resistance to what I wanted. So it starts with acceptance from where you currently are. And a good way to really ground into self-acceptance for where we currently are is just noticing what we are grateful for, coming from this place of gratitude for what you already have, what's already working well, what you already like. So things like, I'm so grateful that my body is mobile. I'm so grateful that my skin is clearing up. I'm so grateful that I can walk 500 meters. There are thousands of processes that are always going on within our body to keep us healthy every single day. And focusing on what our body is doing for us, even from like a functional place, is really going to ground us into gratitude and acceptance. Gratitude's not all about like love. It's more about extracting things that we currently accept, that we can currently draw on, and focusing our energy and attention on that and expanding from that place. And that second piece that I've already kind of touched on is doing more things that you actually enjoy. It doesn't mean that sometimes you're going to have goals, you're going to have to work hard, things might feel a bit harder, put more effort in. But I think a lot of us just do things because we think it's what we should be doing. I really only started to ask myself in the last few years, is this exercise that I'm doing, am I enjoying this? Is this food I'm eating, am I actually enjoying this and feeling good? So it's starting to ask ourselves that question, am I enjoying this, or am I doing this because I think I have to do it like this because everyone else is? Get in touch with what feels good for you. So guys, we're coming towards the end of this episode. There's actually so much more I could say on this. I would like to give a few more tangible tips perhaps in another episode, but I'm sure I've got you thinking with this one. What I want to finish on, guys, is just reminding you that the relationship we have with our body, it is a lifelong relationship. It's one that we have to work on forever. And it's okay if you're at a place where it feels really difficult. It's okay if you feel like, it's not happening, it's not easy. I've been there too, but I can promise you with just small commitments, small changes, sitting on some of the stuff that I've talked on today, that with time, it is possible to like your body. It's possible to feel at home in your body. It is possible to change that relationship. And especially to those who have been struggling with chronic illness, chronic symptoms, I understand how much resentment having symptoms can make you feel towards your body, anger, a whole lot of different emotions. And I really hope today it shows you that there is light at the end of the tunnel as well. We're all human. We're all going to have our days, but please be kind to yourself, because the best thing we can do is accept ourselves fully. Like I talk about a lot, the good, the bad, what we like, what we dislike, and continue to practice building that relationship with him. I hope you have a stunning rest of the week. And as always, please share your reflections, share this podcast to those that you think would benefit. Please rate this podcast if you've enjoyed it. And I look forward to seeing you guys on the next episode.